Before we begin, thank you very much to underscore Zeus for joining the Patreon campaign. Thank you very much for the help. Thank you for pitching in to keep the channel alive. And thank you for coming back. I do recognize that name. Do appreciate that. Okay, so just a heads up so you know what's happening during the holidays. So I do have a big video I want to get out sometime. I would like to have it out before Christmas, but it's a beast to edit, so that might not be likely. But keep an eye out just in case. More importantly, for Christmas, I will be doing like the finale of the Advent verses as my video of the day. And then if you want to see a Christmas haul on the 26th, yes, I'll do a Christmas haul. I never like doing it, but you want to see it, so okay, fine, whatever. I will give in to your demands. But so there's your schedule for the week as it is so far. But for now, we're just going to do what I normally do, which is talk about whatever random topic came to mind today. What came to mind today is this photo. So you'll recognize these two from Hasbro's YouTube streams. They do. This is like 2/3 of the face of the Transformers brand today. And they took this interesting photo in front of a display case, I presume at Hasbro HQ, because not only does it feature Haslab Unicron in both of its forms, it also happens to feature two prototypes of the original G1 Unicron. Now, it's always cool to see that those still exist. The fact that relics like that actually are still intact and like able to be displayed like that is pretty cool. And when I first saw this photo, I was having people are saying like, are they teasing the next Haslab? Because at some point they, and when I saw this photo at first, the top had been cropped. So I didn't see what was sitting on top of the cabinet at first. And at first my brain went, are they doing G1 Unicron as a Haslab? That would be so cool. No. No. That's not what's going on here. No, they just randomly put a Cybertron Primus on top of this cabinet of Unicrons, which really has you wondering, really wondering, why isn't the Cybertron Unicron toy in there? But more importantly, has you wondering, are they teasing a Haslab of Primus? Okay, so this is my favorite thing to do. This is wild speculation time. So now let's get things started. So it is the Cybertron Primus toy that they're teasing because really that's the only Primus toy that exists that fully represents what he is. You know, Cybertron with a robot mode. So it's a cool idea. Now, if that is what they're teasing, let's keep this in mind. There are a few things to keep in mind here. Number one, there are the rules of the Haslab that they've stated. Number one, that the most important one, not going to be an Optimus Prime. They're never going to do Optimus Primes. That's important. When I get to the end of this list, it's going to be important. Keep it in mind for now. They also said the next Haslab was not going to be Victory because they did it twice in a row and they wanted something that was appropriate for the 40th anniversary. Okay, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. And then there was the clue that they dropped, which was basically the term Omega. That had a lot of people thinking Omega Prime, but that breaks the rule. They don't need a Haslab to sell an Optimus Prime, even the RID one. So I really think, like, if it is referring to anything, it would be referring to what you see in the top right corner there, the Omega Lock, which would, yes, indicate Primus, or rather the planet of Cybertron, is going to be the next Haslab project. Now, this is a very different beast. Let's be honest with ourselves. Cybertron has only had one proper toy, and that was during the Cybertron toy line, appropriately enough. Primus isn't as big a character as Unicron. You know, it's not a character who has been neglected and not, you know, and never had a proper figure produced since its creation. It is not a character who has, legendary scenes that, you know, most Transformer fans remember, like the transformation of Unicron, you know, the devouring of, the Kranix's planet, you know, things like that. The destruction of Lithone scene that started the movie. Primus doesn't have that. So you're not banking nostalgia as much here. You're banking on, like, do people remember the planet of Cybertron? And then you start wondering, what else does this work as? Do you really do it as Cybertron, or do you use one of the more classic depictions? Here is the original vestige of Primus when he was one of the gods of light. You know, the could, because this is going back to its original roots and Primus's original depictions, and this depiction has been used as Primus for a great many of years, and I would argue has come up far more often than the Cybertron version. We've seen this. This is not a lucky draw. This is actually a Primus toy repainted from Hot Rod. More often than not in fiction, Primus's robotic mode is somewhat based, at least in the head, on Rodimus, because that was the whole chosen one thing, you know. And it's not so much, you know, it's not just that the Matrix of Leadership responds so strongly to Rodimus Prime that he is the chosen one of G1. No. He literally has the face of God, apparently. So there's plenty of depictions of Primus as a gold hot rod or Rodimus Prime, you know, or at the very least has a head similar to his. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Haslab went more in that direction rather than just aping the details off of the Cybertron figure, which, you know, don't really harken to Generation 1 as much. You know, and this is Haslab. You know, if this was a Titan class Primus, I go, okay, fine, just make the Cybertron toy bigger. But that's not what this is. You know, this is Haslab. It's going to be gigantic. It's going to be a completely new toy. So maybe a new direction is best. How about that War Within one that came up? Who remembers this design? I still love this design for Primus, by the way. Like, this kind of just looks like this gigantic, beefy, epic bot, and I love it. Yeah. It's a very different beast, but it also feels a lot more like what Cybertron could potentially turn into. And because the shell is already accounted for, he's not going to have that like plastic lasagna thing that Unicron ended up with on his legs. Now, I know what everyone in the comments is going to cry out. No, there's a third-party Primus on the way that's using that design. Guess what? I don't care. I will give you this. It does look impressive. There's, you know, very little kibble and shell hanging off of this robot. They did really impressive things engineering-wise with Cell, their Unicron. I personally didn't like how it looked in a few ways, especially in the planet mode. Granted that, the Cybertron looks pretty much ideal, okay? I will give them this. It looks better than their Unicron did. And yes, it's based on the design of Primus I actually liked. Knowing Hasbro and their strictness to G1, I wouldn't be surprised if it was somewhat a mix between the Cybertron and the classic depiction, where, you know, you might have more of that tech greeble across the torso and some of the design elements, but the head might be much closer to looking like a giant Rodimus Prime head than anything, and it might have a lot more gold to it. That's what I'm imagining in my head at the moment. So the one grievance I have with the one that's on screen right now is that that's not G1 Cybertron. You know, that's not the classic depiction of the planet. You know, keep in mind, this is the 40th anniversary release of, you know, for Haslab. This is going to be their big figure, their big everything. So if this is an anniversary piece for Transformers, then it has to lean Generation 1, so which means they have to figure out how to make Cybertron look like this. This is going to be exceedingly tricky. You know, that enormous gash into the planet, you know, the huge amount of damage on the bottom right side of the design. It's not going to be easy to craft a robot around this. Now, on one hand, maybe it takes some of the chunk out of it. Maybe it handles some of the kibble for them. But I would love for this to actually be the design, you know, rather than making like what a perfect Cybertron would look like they did in, you know, Beast Wars and Beast Machines or any of the most depictions since then. I want the damaged Cybertron. I want the one that actually looks like it's been through 4 million years of war, 9 million years of war, whatever. I want it to look beaten up, and I want that chasm that lets me look all the way into the center of the toy. Probably not going to get it. I want it though. Here's what else I want, and I need this. I need an extreme amount of detail in the planet mode. This is one of those Haslabs where I don't think I care. I don't really think I care about the robot mode nearly as much as the planet, because that's the biggest depiction of Cybertron is as a planet. turning into a robot always came later. You know, even the Marvel run did not think of doing that with Cybertron. We didn't really have transforming Cybertron. As a concept, yes. As something within main fiction, you had to wait till the mid-2000s to get that. Here, I need extreme amounts of detail on the planet. I need to be able to see individual towers. I need to be able to see lights in some windows on the big cities. If I look at this from a distance, it has to look like how the planet Earth looks like lit up in the dark, you know, like where you see like photos of like the dark side of the planet. It's away from the sun and you can see all this like masses of city lights if you're close up enough. That's kind of how I want it to look. You know, I want it to look like a lived-in planet. I want to be able to actually see where all the Transformers are and would be if they were roaming around here. That does mean including some of the most famous landmarks, you know, cities that were depicted in the original comic book or even the original cartoons. I want to see Iacon. I want to see Kaon. You know, maybe I even want to see Cybertropolis. That might be the only Beast Machines throw-in I want in this. And this is not a new thing. Cybertron Primus actually did this. This is Kaon. This is basically what Kaon looks like. If you actually go to the TF Wiki and look up Kaon, it basically looks like a space mushroom growing out of Cybertron. So this is actually like, it looks weird, but it's actually fairly accurate. I want to see details like this. I want to be able to actually use this as a map. Like if I was doing like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign on Cybertron, I want to be able to use the Primus toy to actually map out where the cities are and how big everything is. And I want to be able to map out like travel time using this thing. That's what I want. Here's something I want, but I won't get. I want the scale to be correct, but that is impossible. That is literally impossible because that's the scale. Unicron is big enough to be a threat to any Transformer, but against Cybertron itself, he's basically Godzilla Earth. So yes, he is basically a massive force of destruction, but he can still stand on the planet comfortably. So yeah, Haslab Primus is not going to be that big. He is going to be probably on equal size to Unicron. That's about as close as we're going to get, and I don't blame them for it, because that would be absurd to make this in scale. Even if we go with the Marvel Comics, the scale's closer, still pretty far off. Still pretty far off. But it's gonna be the same size as Unicron, basically. That's what I'm guessing at anyway. Now, what do we want him to do? What else do we want him to include? We have to discuss this because, you know, there's few depictions of Primus out there. So how do you make this worth the price? What does it do? Because it's not like Unicron where like you've got the rings, you know, and the ships that are known to fly around it. You don't have the maw to be like a big gimmicky thing. You've got a much more limited amount. You know, so like, okay, can you give me like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like gimmicky things I would want. There's really not much. Do we want an Omega lock? They tease this with the word Omega. Do we actually want an Omega lock as part of this? I don't think I would object, because it is a throwback to the original toy of Primus as Cybertron. However, I don't want it to be integrated into the engineering. I don't want it to be integrated into the transformation sequence like it was on the Cybertron toy. I would much rather it just be an accessory, a detail, just fluff, essentially. Give me 4 cyber keys to plug into it. Give me a spot somewhere on the planet where it can plug in without like just being like an obvious socket for an accessory, and I'd be fine with that. I'd be okay with that. But otherwise, if you're going to make it into like an actual required part of the engineering, no, don't do that. I don't want that. I don't know anyone who would want that. You want a weird one I want? I want this. So I showed you the original incarnation of Primus from the comics. This is what Primus looks like as part of Cybertron as far as the Marvel Comics goes. I want to be able to open up Cybertron somehow, like almost like a viewport, like a panel. It just open up and like look in, and there is like this like chrome red and gold, room that is just like here's Primus on the inside, the way he was originally depicted in the Marvel comics. Weird one, but at least as an homage, like even if it's just somewhere within the transformation scheme, like as you're transforming it, like as you close up the midsection or something, you notice on like somewhere like in the middle of the stomach area, oh, there actually is like that Marvel Primus just sitting there in his gut, and then you close it up and you don't see it anymore. I can imagine a lot of little things like that being worked into Primus just to make it a little bit more interesting as you transform it. How about moon bases? What if this did come with Moonbase 1 and 2 that had like translucent stems so you could have it floating over them floating over the planet? Because this thing will come with a stand just like Unicron did. So, maybe it's part of the stand or part of the figure itself if it has plug-in spots where you could have Moonbase 1 and 2 floating around it. Moonbase 1 and 2 being appropriately sized to fit inside Unicron's maw. To the point where I would even have like a removable section, like a removable shell that would actually like give the space again on the surface of the moon that grooves for the teeth to latch into. I think that would be cool. In a similar vein, you could also do like the dead head of Unicron, or like one of those, or like you could have like one of those like sticks or whatever, one of those stands that plugs into the planet for the moon base to float around. What if I could plug the broken, like the damaged version of the Haslab Unicron head on there? Because it does come off. What if I could have that planet float? What if I have the Unicron head floating around Cybertron like season 3? That would be cool. I would actually be really down for that. You want a silly one we're not going to get? Grand Galvatron parts. Parts I can plug on to this big planet to actually make Grand Galvatron. And if I know that's not going to be a Haslab thing, that'd be so hysterical if that was like one of the moon bases are going to be the stretch goals. Let's get that straight right now. They'll be like stretch goal number 2, and then they'll figure out something to be stretch goal number 1, which might be like his big cannon from Cybertron. Now that I think of it. So what if this is a third party thing? This is absolutely like Dr. Wu's magnum opus is being able to create a head, arms, and legs that pop onto Cybertron and actually make Grand Galvatron. I'm waiting for that. But that all kind of leaves it. We can speculate all we want about how it's going to be done or what we want the toy to do. But the big question here and the big thing is it going to actually be worth $575? And keep in mind, this is $575 a few years ago. Primus isn't going to have as many features, but he's going to be just as big and just as complicated. So he might actually be a hair more expensive, because a lot of stuff went up in price in the last few years. Whether or not this is going to be like $600 maybe, I don't know, but it's a much harder sell than Unicron. Let's be honest. This is Hasbro taking a genuine chance, because Cybertron itself isn't a character. It's a place. It's a, at the best, it's an iconic piece of Transformers, but it is at best just the planet. It's a setting. It doesn't have a character to it, and it doesn't have huge moments to it that make us really attached to it the way that we do for Unicron. It doesn't have a majestic transformation sequence that we, all remember verbatim. So it's risky. It's a big risk. And while I don't think it's going to fail, because none of the Transformer Haslabs have failed so far, it definitely feels like the one that has the highest risk factor to it. Just because there is demand for it, but is anyone really going to be paying, around $600 for a big ball? I don't know. So that is the speculation for the day. Are we actually getting Primus? Is that what the Hasbro team is teasing? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you want on the toy in the comments, because I know there's a lot of things Primus could be or could do that I haven't included in this video. But that's what speculation is for. So feel free to speculate in the comments below, and as always, I will see you next time.
We parlay with the captain.
You would think
A werecroc is going to listen to elvish rules of piracy.
Of course it would be
Got
the
it.
freaking elves
Cool.
that invented parlay.
I had to think of a quick replacement for the French.